Welcome to CBS News. I'm Robert Costa, the chief election and campaign correspondent. Joining us for a conversation is Congressman James Clyburn of South Carolina. The congressman is a longtime leader in the Democratic Party, and many Democrats give him credit for the Biden presidency, since his endorsement was such a crucial factor in that 2020 race. Congressman Clyburn is currently in House Democratic leadership, serving as the assistant Democratic leader. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us today for a conversation about Congress, the future of the Democratic Party, and your own role. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Congressman Clyburn, one issue that's dominating Washington this week is President Biden's handling of records marked as classified, found at his home, found at the Penn Biden Center. What is your assessment of his handling of this matter so far?
Well, I think all of us are quite aware that the president has expressed some frustration with the way this is going. All of us are. The fact of the matter is all of this came about as a result of someone moving documents or boxes from his old office and running across this information, which was immediately turned over. Now, the problem with all of that is you keep moving, you keep going through boxes, and all of a sudden, a second page crops up, and you go someplace else, and a third page crops up. It would be much better for all of this to just come out at one time, but this is frustrating to him, and it is to a lot of us. But when you look at things like this, you have to take into account intent. What is the intent? No one sees anything like the president intentionally taking documents into his private residence or private office. And so the investigations will go forward, and we'll see what the results are.
Has President Biden spoken to you personally about this issue?
No, he has not. I have not talked to the president in the last couple of weeks. I don't think. I think I may have spoken to him a couple of weeks ago, but we have not talked about this.
In terms of what's next on this front, what do you believe the president and the White House should do?
Exactly what he's doing. Let the Justice Department do its work, stay out of the way, and if any other documents are discovered, do what he's done before, immediately turn them over. And so I think that most people, if you want to be fair about all of this, can understand how these things happen. I just move out of my whip office. I have no idea what's in those boxes because whatever's in those boxes, I didn't put it there. And so we just have to wait to see what I may discover when I go through the boxes.
You are a longtime member of the Democratic leadership, the House leadership. Do you worry about your own situation you've seen classified materials before? Have you ever brought them home or thought about maybe they slipped into a box of your own?
No, I've never brought any of that home. In fact, I've never brought any of it out of the skiff. And of course, I've not even been, I think maybe one time in the last 20 years I've been in the skiff because I stopped going to those meetings because I never forget coming out of the skiff when it was there in the Capitol building, in the old skiff. And I walked out onto the grounds, and the reporter came up and asked me a question about what I had just 15 minutes earlier been told was top secret. And to me, that was untoward. I never went in that skiff again because I never want anyone saying that I may have said something that I should not have said. So if I don't go in the room, whatever I say will not be informed by any information that's in the room. So in the last 20 years, I think I've been into a skiff once.
Congressman, You have been a longtime activist on the civil rights front. You and your late wife met protesting for civil rights in South Carolina. You have watched this country deal with violence in America for many decades. I am sure you are aware of this latest episode of planned violence, planned shootings in New Mexico. A GOP candidate was arrested for this plot about political shootings related to Democratic office holders. What does this episode reveal to you about where America is in 2023 in terms of violence in America and election denying continuing to be an issue?
I think the president, in his speech on Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, not the celebration, but his actual birthday, which was Sunday, he used the word inflection, 2 words, inflection point. We are at a point in this country when we have to make a decision as to whether or not we will continue our pursuit towards a more perfect union, or whether or not we are going to give in to the autocrats and forget about the fundamentals of what this country has been about for centuries. It's not a perfect country. It's never going to be perfect. But we've always worked in pursuit of perfection. It seems now that there's a strong force in the country that has decided that democracy is not the way to go, that free and fair elections are not the way to conduct our government, that we are to have preordained results. And you do that by rigging elections, rigging gerrymandering, and for the Supreme Court of the United States to make the recent decisions that it's made regarding redistricting tells me that something is amiss in this country, and we had better decide whether or not we want this country to continue to be a democracy, because you're not going to have a democracy when the Supreme Court of the United States allow unfair elections to take place, when they can look and say, this is a racial problem, but we're going to allow the election to go forth anyway. They've done that in Louisiana, in Alabama, in South Carolina, in Florida, in North Carolina. Come on. How many states are left for that to take place in?
Do members of Congress now live in fear?
Yes, we do. I don't use fear to the nth degree. There's much more concern than we've had in recent years, and it's being made worse and I just got to say this because it's true, my Republican colleagues seem to want to tolerate dishonesty, tolerate this just election denial of what is going on with my Republican friends seems to be anathema to what this country has been all about.
Speaking of your Republican colleagues, 2 of them in the House, Congressman Gosar, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, have now been seated on committees after years of controversy around both of them. Will Democrats, including yourself, take any steps to try to block them from committee assignments?
I don't think so. I certainly wouldn't. If McCarthy wants this to be what his tenure as Speaker of the House is all about, if he wants his place in history to be determined by these kinds of actions, let him have it. I just think that if it's all said and done, he is going to be on the wrong side of history with these issues.
What about Democrats Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell? McCarthy has said as Speaker he will not seat them on the Intelligence Committee. Is there anything Democrats can do to stop that?
I don't think so. If that is what he wants to do as Speaker, he has that authority. And so I don't think there's anything we could do to stop that from happening. But I do say this, I don't know if I were in his place, I would want that to be my legacy.
Another congressman is drawing a lot of scrutiny, a lot of attention, a Republican from New York, George Santos. Democrats potentially could try to rally support against him by a discharge petition, or to try to expel him from the House in some way. Number one, do you believe Santos should resign? And two, should Democrats take any formal steps against him?
Well, I do think he should resign. I do think that Democrats should join any effort. If there are Republicans, remember on the discharge petition, you got to get 218 people to sign. We don't have a 212 Democrats. So I would say to my Democratic friends, well, 213, we got a vacancy, I think is going to be a Democratic seat there in Virginia. But I believe that what we ought to do as Democrats is join with whatever Republicans that may exist that want to do something about this. So if a Republican puts up a discharge petition, I'll certainly sign it. I would not encourage Democrats to put up the discharge petition. Let it come from the Republicans. This is their colleague, and they ought to initiate the action.
So to be clear, Congressman, if a Republican in the House decided to start a discharge petition to strip Congressman Santos of his committees or expel him from the House in some way, you would be willing to sign on to that after evaluating the document?
Yes, I would be willing to do it. I would hope there'll be about 10 of them that will do it to ensure that we get the proper result. If it's only one, it will go to 213 or 214, and you still will need 4 more. So I would want it to be more than one. Even McCarthy himself wanted to have at least 5 to vacate the chair, though he finally agreed to 1. I would like to see at least 5 Republicans start the discharge petition.
Do you believe in the coming weeks there could be some bipartisan momentum to strip Santos of his committees at the very least? Well,
it could be. I don't know that anybody will initiate such. I do believe, once again, that he could be stripped from his committees by the Republicans alone. He is theirs. He was created by them. He got these assignments from the Republican Speaker of the House. And so I think he gave it to them, and it's up to him to take them from him.
You bring up an intriguing political idea, a group of 5 to 10 to 15 Republicans at some point working with the Democrats, 200 plus, to get things done, whether it's on Santos or perhaps another area like the debt limit. Do you believe at the end of the day, the debt limit in the House of Representatives will have to be addressed by Democrats and a small group of Republicans?
Yes, I do. And that's nothing unusual. That's been the case before. Even an intriguing little sidestep was made by the Senate when Mitch McConnell decided to do something technical so that they wouldn't have to go on record as having done it, but allow it to get done. Whatever it is, we cannot afford to threaten the full faith and credit of the United States of America. That, to me, would be the worst possible scenario for any Speaker of the House to start his or her tenure.
House Republicans keep talking about spending cuts. They want that demand to be met by Democrats. You are a Democrat's Democrat. You know the party better than anyone. As this debt limit fight unfolds, should Democrats hold the line on a clean debt limit extension or should they consider having some spending cuts on the table to get House Republican support?
Well, I'm a great believer that you ought to negotiate, and I do believe that you ought to always be willing to make compromises. But you can't not compromise your principles. You cannot compromise the full faith and credit of the United States of America. And on principle, Democrats are not going to agree to anything that would jeopardize Social Security, Medicare, these kinds of issues that are there when the American people, they pay into Social Security, they pay into Medicare. And for us to be high and mighty about taking that away after they've made these investments, after they've planned their whole careers, factoring in Social Security and Medicare, that is something we must not compromise on at all. Other things, whether it can be spending cuts, let's talk about them, but never on Social Security, Medicare, and our security of the United States of America.
Congressman, former President Trump is going to head to your state later this month, former President Trump, as he continues in his 2024 presidential run. I also heard recently that you said you were surprised that Democrats are moving to have their first primary be in your state, the Palmetto State, South Carolina. Congressman, frankly, I was surprised to hear you were surprised, because nothing happens in South Carolina Democratic politics unless it goes through Congressman Clyburn. So let's be real here. You had some influence in pulling this primary to the front of the line.
Absolutely not. That is absolutely not true. I did not have anything to do with this being in the front of the line. I'm an old politician, let's just say, and I mean that in both chronologically as well as length in service. And I do believe that things were working well with South Carolina being the fourth and first in the South. I have always advocated for South Carolina to be the first in the South. I have never advocated for South Carolina to be first in the nation. So when I got the call saying that the president was going to make this recommendation, it was a surprise to me.
What about President Biden? When do you believe he will formally announce his 2024 campaign?
I don't know. I hope he will announce to do so. I will leave it up to him as to what the timing ought to be. But I'm all in for President Biden. I think he's demonstrated in these 2 years, soon to be 2 years, that he is deserving of re-election. And I do believe he will be re-elected, irrespective of who the Republicans may put up.
Do you believe he will face any primary challenge?
Well, I don't think he will, and I don't think he should. The history is very clear on what happens when you challenge a sitting president like this. We can go back to Kennedy and Carter. We can go back beyond that.
Well, 1968. Think about Kennedy and Gene McCarthy with LBJ.
Yeah, I was about to get to Gene McCarthy and Lyndon Baines Johnson. Those two indicators are clear for me that is perilous. And for us to challenge a sitting president, especially one that's had the kind of successes that this president has had, because it'll just be personal. In fact, if you get back to it, with Jimmy Carter, irrespective of what people would like to think, it was not about Jimmy Carter as the president. Sure, he had some challenges that came from foreign affairs. They were not internal. Jimmy Carter had the best record of any president until now with fairness with our judiciary. There's nothing more lasting than the judiciary. And up until Biden came along, Jimmy Carter had the best record of appointing people of color to the judiciary. And just a good person. He was not deserving of being challenged in the primary, and you saw what it got us.
Are you convinced that President Biden is going to run?
Yes, I am.
What gives you that conviction?
Because anybody with the kind of record that he's got, anybody that has turned the country around the way he has, passing more progressive legislation than any president since Lyndon Baines Johnson, and having the tenacity to pick up from where Harry Truman left off in breaking glass ceilings when it comes to things like fairness in government. I've told him on many occasions that I believe that he ought to announce for re-election and get the playbook laid out by Harry Truman back in 1948 and use that as a mantra upon which to run for re-election. Because I just see this president as being the reincarnation of Harry Truman.
Well, we have to have you back at some point to have a longer conversation on President Truman. I know how much you've focused on Truman's record on civil rights and the military. That's a longer, deeper conversation. I look forward to having that at some point. Have you recommended, though, to President Biden that he should announce in your state, South Carolina?
No, I have not. I do believe that the president ought to make the assessments that he need to be made. But he's running for president of the United States of America. And I would have no problem with him announcing, since it's already been breached by the previous president, do it from the Oval Office.
Well, we'll have to watch. I keep thinking, Congressman, maybe he announces if he decides to run at the USS Yorktown, where that famous meeting took place between Congressman Clyburn and then Vice President Biden about whether this was all going to come together in 2020. But Congressman Clyburn, we hope to have you back another time. Thanks so much for stopping by for a conversation with CBS News.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us here at CBS News for a conversation, another one with some of the nation's key officials, elected officials, and political players. Thank you.